Hello and welcome to another video by flashjazzcat. And it's the first one in a while, and this time the reason for that was a family bereavement, as some of you will know from community posts and various social media posts that I've put up, for which thank you very much for the sympathies and kind comments. By the way, my mother passed away at the beginning of August. This was 11 months after my father passed away in October last year, or September last year, sorry. That was about 18 months after my wife Deborah's father passed away at the beginning of 2020. So it's been, the whole time has been characterised by big life events, well, or death events in this case, on top of other stuff that was going on. So, as you can imagine, I've been very busy for the past few weeks. We had the funeral last week. That coincided very closely with our 14th wedding anniversary, so Deborah already had a week booked for that, a week off from work booked. So we had the funeral on Wednesday, and we went down and took the ashes to Whitby on Friday and dispersed them in a little bit of coast beach just to the north of the North Pier, which is the exact spot where we dispersed my father's ashes not that long before that. So there's still a lot to do in terms of administration, obviously, with the estate and what's left behind. And I'm completely swamped with paperwork and phone calls and emails and stuff. That being said, I've had a box from Poland. A big box came from Poland the other day. And in that big box, as well as a 400 machine, an Atari 400 donated by Candle. Excellent, thank you very much, Candle. I appreciate it very much indeed. That's actually my second Atari 400. There was all these bags, these anti-static bags, full of pre-production samples and prototype versions of all kinds of new hardware from the house of Candle and Lotharek, if you like. And what I propose to do in this video is just spend a couple of minutes going over each one, and later on, not necessarily consecutively from this video, but dotted around the place, we'll get back to a more detailed look at all of these devices in future videos. So since time is of the essence, let's go ahead and get on with it. But before we do that, let's have a word from our fantastic sponsor, PCBWay. As you can see, I've got the PCBWay.com website open behind me. I've got it on both screens because it's that good. First thing I do in the morning when I get up, I go to PCBWay.com and I put it on both screens. PCBWay are experts in PCB prototyping and fabrication. So whether you want prototype board or you're looking at full manufacturing process, they've got you covered. They do CNC machining, 3D printing, you name it, they do it. So if you need a PCB, head on down to PCBWay.com today. Support them and then you support this channel, so it's win-win. Alright, so back to the bags. So what's in the bags, I hear you ask? Well, that's a very good question. Let me show you. These bags arrived in a big box from Poland the other day, courtesy of Candle and Lotharek, for which I would like to, of course, extend my thanks, even though half of the stuff in here is just a catalyst for me to do more work. But never mind, Candle kindly sent me an Atari 400. It's a little bit beaten up, but it's most welcome, of course, and he sent me something to fit into it as well, which I'll show you presently. And other than that Atari 400 that he's kindly donated to me, so I've got two of those now, we've got all this stuff here. Now, one of the things here, and hopefully by the time this video actually goes out, I'll have already got in touch with them and posted this, but this needs to go to Chris, Mr. Gadget 184 UK, I think. Anyway, there's an approximation of his channel name that Candle's put on there. And I haven't got your email address, Chris. He sometimes comments on my videos, which I appreciate very much, because he's a pretty one of the bigger retro creators, Chris. But I haven't got an email address from him. He doesn't accept Twitter DMs, so I just want to get his address off him. So Chris, if you're watching this and I haven't already been in touch with you, I'm sure I will have. But I need your address so I can post this stuff out to you that Candle sent over for you. So that's your stuff. So we'll get that out of the way now. I don't know what that is, by the way. I've no idea, and I couldn't talk about it with any insight. Right, so what will we look at first? Well, I think the first thing we'll look at, this appears to be, I haven't even spoken about half of this stuff, so some of the stuff I don't even know what it is. But this, I'm assuming what this is a mouse or keyboard adapter of some sort. So that's going to be fun. So we've already got the mouster. It looks very similar to the mouster, in fact. So we can see the usual 10-pin 2mm pitch G tag connector on here. With the hallmark of the Candle product. Don't know much about this one, but it looks to me like it does a similar job to the mouster USB mouse adapter. So I'll try that with a wireless mouse at some point. Right, next we've got CO61922 Freddy replacement. So I think I've already got a couple of these that Lotharek sent over. I don't know if these are the same ones. Oh, I guess they probably are, but that's going to be useful anyway. So yes, he's even sent the legs with it, but that's going to be useful anyway, because of course Freddy's are quite hard to get hold of now, as are a lot of these old VLSIs now. Even 6502 Sollies are getting rather expensive now. So okay, so that's that. Oh, this is interesting. You'll like this one. Well, some of you will like this one. This is, now it's not a UAV, it's like a UAV, but it's a completely original product, I have to point out. This is another Candle device. We'll zoom in a bit here so we can have a closer look. Right, so this is kind of a UAV device, a similar device, but a completely different design. And this is kind of important that we have something like that. It's got a bit of a bent leg there. Better straighten that up. Jumper. This is pretty important because importing UAV from American suppliers can be really expensive, considering the price of the actual board itself. And by the time you add the shipping and the import duty, VAT, etc., which is almost always applied on products from the States, you end up paying, I don't know, 50 quid for a tiny little board like this. And as wonderful as the UAV is, it's not really, it doesn't really fulfill its remit as an inexpensive video upgrade when you have to spend that kind of money on it to get it into Europe. So yeah, so this will I'll find out from Candle how to wire this thing up, and we'll give it a spin in a computer in a future video, I would imagine. That's not something I'm going to be able to test right now. Alright, so that's 3 down. What we're going to go for next. Now this isn't a VBXE. It's not VBXE 3, which some of you might have seen screenshots of recently, but isn't this beautiful though? Isn't that gorgeous? This is a VBXE adapter board, carrier board in fact, for the Atari 800. And obviously it'll sit very nicely in a machine that already has an Incognito in it, so we've got all the headers here. So I'm assuming, I'm trying to remember offhand, if the VBXE, will that plug in upside down there perhaps? I don't know. It's going to be a VBXE XE version. No, it's not going to plug in upside down. I'm not quite sure how we go about this. I'm wondering if you have to modify the headers and put them on the bottom of the board and then plug the board into this. I don't know. We're going to have to look into this. What I'm going to have to do, because I've fixed the VBXE that died on me a while ago that Lotharek had sent, and clearly it was down to me to fix that, so I replaced the FPGA. I actually waited months for the FPGA to come from China, but eventually it did. I got a couple of them actually, and when I replaced that, it worked again. So I've got this, the VBXE that I kind of earmarked to go in an 800 is alive and well. I'm assuming this is a what's that? Halt ready. So we've got some useful signals, because obviously this is going to go in one of the RAM slots. So we've got a what have we got here? Well, we've got a couple of PBI connectors here, I think, parallel connectors, parallel bus. He's really made maximum use of the space. This is very, very good. I can't wait to use this actually and fit this in the machine. So you're going to have VBXE here, whack it in, and then run the RGB out the back of the case somewhere, or whatever we decide to do. So that's going to be a good video. Alright, next, have a look at this here. So this is the thing I mentioned before that's going to go in one of my Atari 400s, and this is the Atari 400 Incognito Lite. Now, those of you familiar with the Incognito for the 800 will be fairly familiar with how this is going to work. Now, this, I would imagine, I haven't spoken to Candle recently about it, but this has a lattice CPLD, FPGA, whatever it is. I think it's a CPLD. And basically a similar chip layout to the side 3. So really what we've probably got here, and bearing in mind we've also got a SD card slot remotely mounted. So that's obviously a connector board. One of these is the JTAG header for programming the lattice, and the other one is obviously an interconnect for the SD card. There's no ribbon provided, but that should be easy. And there's obviously a secondary set of signals that need to go in here. So this presumably pops into the ROM board on the 400. So obviously I've got no idea what the wiring is on this. There's be a long-term thing to figure out how to rig this prototype board up. But yeah, this is going to give you basically a side 3 and a RAM expansion and an XE compatible Atari 400. But I think we've got a long way to go with this one, because obviously we need firmware for it. But that's yeah, that's going to be good. And I think maybe with one of those proper full action aftermarket keyboards for a 400, you're going to have something that's really pretty much as powerful as an Incognito machine, if not more so, because it's going to have the cartridge emulation that you've got in side 3 is going to be present here as well. So it's going to be pretty incredible. Now, one thing I haven't got here in this collection of stuff is the Incognito 3 for the 800. That one hasn't come across yet, but that's yet another product. So this will be the feature set that you've got here will basically be present in the Incognito 3 as well. Obviously, it'd be longer, it'd be more shaped more like the Incognito, I would assume. But yes, so Incognito 3 Lite, and I'm assuming it's light just because it's small. I don't think the feature set should be significantly lessened compared to the Incognito 3, but I'm not too sure. That remains to be seen. I don't know offhand how much RAM we've got on here, whether it's a 2, I'm assuming it's a 2 megabyte chip. But yeah, so you're eventually going to get Incognito for your Atari 400. So let's put this one away, and we're getting close to some really pretty exciting stuff here. Right, now what I've got here is, as you can see, it is a stereo board. So we've had Pokémax and Pokémax 2 for quite a while now, and now we've got, I think this is SimpleStereo 3, is it? I'm not too sure offhand. I think you would call it SimpleStereo 3, and there's so many headers on in here that I'm assuming this also has kind of an ACI interface or USB keyboard adapter, something along those lines. I'm assuming it does. This is lattice powered as well. The BGA chip on here. So obviously multiple Pokey chips. You've got the primary Pokey chip, so you only need one Pokey for this. And the secondary Pokey chips are obviously emulated on here. So this is very interesting indeed. And as I say, I'm pretty sure it's going to have ACI or USB keyboard, mouse adapter functionality with all those pins on it. I mean, I'm not sure. It probably as well, bearing in mind that VBXE 3 is going to have what looks like HDMI out. You're going to have to find a way to get your stereo and quad audio and all the other various stuff, Covox and stuff. You're going to have to need a way to get that out of the HDMI connector, so I'm assuming there's going to be some cooperation between these devices here and the VBXE 3 to feed the audio out on the HDMI connector. Oh, there we go, it says on the front. Yeah, on the front there it says SimpleStereo V4, and there it is, and very nice it looks too. So that'll be going in one of my machines, probably the one that's going to get VBXE 3, hopefully when that arrives. I'll have to plan ahead a little bit rather than just throwing things into random machines, but so there you have it, SimpleStereo version 4. Alright, moving on to the next bag, and in this one we have side 3. Now we've already seen side 3, but right, finally. Alright, moving on, we have side 3. Now, what's different about this? Well, it's a different colour to the board that we're used to seeing, but there's more to it than that. If we look down here, we can see that it is, well, you probably can't see it, but this is actually hardware version 3.1. And you'll see that the RAM chip here is actually a BGA chip rather than the normal form factor, but there's also pads for the original 2 megabyte RAM chip, or possibly other capacities as well. The original side 3 had 2 megabytes of RAM. This is actually an 8 megabyte SRAM chip, which is going to open up all kinds of different possibilities. And other than that, the layout's very similar. You've still got the SD card slot, the battery, the RTC chip, 2-position switch, menu button and ATR swap button, and the ROM here, and then the lattice chip up here, but very smart it looks. So really it's been, because side 3 hasn't been available for a while, largely down to the chip shortage that's going on at the moment. It's really disruptive. There's lots of devices we haven't been able to get hold of for a while, including Sophia 2, etc. So hopefully that will all change soon. So this one is a bit more friendly to using whatever components are available at the time, so we can get on with producing and selling these things again. Now, not only is this a new hardware revision, and not only does it have 4 or 8 megabytes in this case SRAM chip on it, but there's something else, and that something else is this. Now this is the side 3 wing, and you can see here this goes into the ECI connector on your Atari XE computer, and the interlink between these two little boards is with this here. Obviously a little bit long, but we'll shorten that. And when I put the has he sent a socket? He hasn't sent a socket. Not to worry, he hasn't sent a socket, but when I put the socket on here, these will be connected. Imagine this is much shorter anyway. So you'll have this little side thing here to plug in to the other part of the ECI connector. Now that opens up a whole new raft of possibilities. We'll have a proper PBI BIOS, those of you familiar with the Ultimate 1 megabyte and the bootable hard disk and ATR disk image support and such like. These extra signals enable the device to take over the whole system bus entirely, replace the RAM on the computer, and of course most importantly intercept serial I/O calls to the operating system. So this will allow side 3 to provide you with a RAM expansion, I think up to 1 megabyte of extended memory. Obviously it's got to be depending on the size of the chip, the SRAM chip. The memory has to be deployed for cartridge emulation, extended memory, PBI BIOS functions when this device is connected. So this will basically end up giving you a subset of the functionality of the external Ultimate 1 megabyte, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So extended memory, so you'll be able to run a proper PBI hard disk with disk operating systems other than Sparta DOS X, MyDOS, Sparta DOS, etc. You'll be able to boot your disk images, your game disk images, with proper PBI support. So anything that works, anything that doesn't use custom serial I/O routines that bypass the operating system itself will work. So this greatly expands the utility of Side 3, and hopefully it won't be significantly more expensive than the current revision. And for many users, especially for casual users who just want to boot the odd disk image or quickly upgrade the RAM on the machine and run some cartridges, this may be all they ever need. So that is the and obviously the beta loader that I've been developing, it's going to include support for this stuff as well. So that's ongoing anyway. So yes, that's Side 3.1. Alright, so here we are with the Side 3.1 plugged into the top of my daily driver 600XL here. So this is the new loader now. Yeah, since the last time I made videos about Side 3, I did some redesign work on this loader here, which I've never had a chance to talk about on a video before yet. So here we go. So the whole thing has been shortened vertically a little bit because there was a couple of users who said that they were getting on CRT monitors, particularly NTSC equipment, they were getting the bottom of the loader, the status line here was getting cut off, which didn't surprise me all that much because the display had got very tall. So I was a bit resistant to changing this at first, but I did eventually had a bit of a brainwave about how I could change things and improve the branding consistency between the software and the hardware, because of course when the case is on, that's the same logo that we get here pretty much. I can't put the case on this board because the hole for the push button at the top here is a bit misaligned, as it always has been actually, but I don't want to bend the switch on this one. So I've just wedged the cartridge doors open. I've also got the lattice programming cable here, USB platform cable, which I'm using to test new JED files on the 3.1 hardware here until it's just right. So it should be apparent now anyway why you've got these options, these extra options in the latest beta: PBI BIOS, PBI device ID, hard disk, and high-speed SIO. Some of the things I threw in there that I think will be a reasonable feature set. You've also got extended RAM as well, of course. It should really be grayed out because I haven't put the wing together yet. So hopefully there'll be a way to dim these options and make them unavailable when the wing part isn't actually plugged into the machine. So yeah, if you're familiar with the beta version, not much has changed. I've moved things around a little bit and tried to make things a little bit more consistent and easier to understand, but I mean there are a lot of options here and there's just no real getting away from that. So yeah, I've been testing some cartridges because it was DMA that it seems to be the most difficult thing to get right on the new hardware, and but as we can see, Space Harrier worked there. So particularly with the large cartridges, but so that's what we're working on at the minute anyway, trying to get everything just so, and once it's stable on a broad selection of computers and with the broadest possible selection of SD cards, then we will be ready to go. And so the stock of this new version of the Side 3 is in, and basically I think it's just a case of getting it to the point where it's got the right firmware on it. We can do in-field updates. I have written an in-field update tool for the actual JED, the logic on the chip here, but that hasn't been well tested yet, I have to admit. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention here while it's on my mind was the file copy facility in this loader. You can tag files, you can tag multiple files, or you can copy whole folder trees if you want to. So I'm going to copy the Prince of Persia folder here, and then I'm going to go into another folder there, and I'm going to paste it. Advanced, complex, multifaceted copy facility, which copies whole directory trees or tagged sets of files, and it does it in incredible speed and with incredible efficiency. And it'll be even quicker when we get DME writes working as well. We can also do stuff like renaming files. You can get at all these with shortcuts, but I'm going through the menu just so you can see what's going on. I changed this rename function so that it's less likely that you're going to obliterate the file type, which is obviously derived from the file extension there. Now, of course, you may be wondering, how the hell do I connect this ECI connector to my XL computer? And that's a good question. That's a question that I can't currently answer, but I'm sure that we'll have some sort of adapter so that this cartridge can go in the cartridge slot on the XL, and the wing, if you like, or there'll be a version of the wing that will connect to the PBI bus connector on the back of the machine, or we could have a secondary PBI adapter that'll actually have the cartridge and ECI slot in it. I think I've got one somewhere from another hard disk host adapter design, which might be able to plug this thing into on the XL, so that'll be good fun. But so what I'm currently working on when I'm not doing repairs and upgrading machines and stuff is this anyway. I'm not really bothered about all the other features that I want to put into the Side 3 loader, the beta that's on release at the moment. I'm solely focused on getting the thing working with the core functionality that we're going to provide here. That's the most important thing, and then we can get this thing available to buy again. Okay, so I just mentioned the external Ultimate 1 megabyte, and here it is. Now this is very exciting. I think a lot of people have been waiting for this one, so let's zoom in. So this, again, like the Side 3 wing, addresses one of the chief complaints, if you like, if you can even frame it in that way, of some of these multi-cartridges where they're unable to take full control of the system bus and boot disk images and such. Obviously we've had the AVG cart, which came up with some interesting solutions to that problem. It had a header on the board which you can connect to the serial bus. Now the reason that works with the AVG is because it's a smart cartridge, if you like. It's basically a coprocessor plugged into the back of the Atari, which does all of the file system management and all the heavy lifting with fat file systems and such like, and it's fast enough that it can actually run a peripheral emulator on the cartridge. Now the way we like to do it is we like the good old 6502 to do all the hard work, and the only semi-intelligent, if you like, component of the hardware is the description of the logic, the virtual hardware description language, which provides the code that goes on this chip here, and that simply describes the signal flow and how the device behaves, how the hardware actually behaves. And I think that there's only one sort of co-processor kind of element, if you like, is the direct memory access engine, DME, which Side 3 and all of these devices will provide, which allows very high speed data transfer from the SD card to RAM to the SD card, etc. And obviously we've got our SD card slot here. So again, this is going to provide, of course it'll go this way up in the XE, this is going to provide RAM expansion, it's going to provide cartridge emulation, it's going to provide a hard disk, disk image support, real-time clock, Sparta-DOS X, my loader, which in turn has its own DOS called FAT-FMS, which is a FAT-based DOS, and a whole ton of other stuff. So this is really, this is where we've been heading all this time, and of course it won't require any soldering either. You'll just plug it into the back of the machine and you'll have all these things. I mean, it's not the first hard disk adapter for the Atari. It's not the first multi-cartridge for the Atari, but it brings all of these things together in one very, very powerful unit. And there's a lot of work to do here, because obviously there's lots of stuff to be done on the firmware, stuff to be done on the loader, in order to take full advantage of what we've actually got here. But very exciting indeed, and this is going to be a fantastic product. So if you're already invested in the kind of ecosystem of Ultimate 1 Megabyte and side cartridges and stuff like that, but perhaps you're not confident with soldering, or perhaps you don't like opening up the machine to fit upgrades internally, this is going to be what you need, because it's really got it all. It's going to provide you with cartridge emulation, RAM expansion, hard disk host adapter, fully bootable, real-time clock, dates, timestamped files, Sparta-DOS-X, FAT-FMS, the Side 3 loader. So that is the XE version of the external Ultimate 1 Megabyte. I'm not sure of the time frame when this is going to be ready. There's still a lot to do, but these devices are so similar in terms of hardware. I would imagine that now that we've got Side 3 pretty much done and dusted, and once we get the PBI functionality of Side 3 with the wing working, I think things should move relatively quickly here, because and certainly the firmware that I've been writing will be generally applicable to all of them. So hopefully I won't have too much of an enormous task to port that stuff to all these different devices. So let's finally have a look at the same thing, but for the XL machine. So this is going to work with your 800XL, 600XL. I'm hoping that this design is actually going to find its way onto an internal new version of Ultimate 1 Megabyte. That would be nice to see as well. But anyway, I digress here. So this is basically similar to what I've just showed you before. It is basically Ultimate 1 Megabyte and Side 3 in meeting in one single device, meshing together in one single, even more powerful device. And obviously we've got our SD card slot, we've got our menu and ETR button, dual position switch to select whether it boots into Sparta-DOS-X or into the loader. And I think this is going to be kind of a, eventually this will be some sort of pass-through for the PBI connector on the back. And yeah, so it's a nice looking board as well. It'll be nice to see it with a case. I hope these things are going to have cases on them. I see this has also got a USB connector. Did the other one have? The XE one doesn't. But this one's got a USB connector on the side, which is absolutely enticing. I think you'll agree. I'm not sure offhand what that's going to be used for. Obviously that's the battery holder. All these devices take a coin cell battery to power the real-time clock when the machine's switched off. So yeah, so this will sit this way in the back of your 600XL or 800XL, and the great thing about this, as I've said before, it'll also provide, you'll have a BIOS just like with the existing Ultimate 1 Megabyte, but you'll also have the ability to supplant the base RAM on the machine. Now the original, the current Ultimate 1 Megabyte could do this if it wanted to, but it doesn't actually have enough RAM on it. It only has the 1 megabyte of RAM. So the host machine still needs to provide that 64K of base memory. Now I think quite possibly, or in fact almost certainly, this one is going to replace the 64K base memory of the machine. So it's going to turn off the base memory in the Atari and use the SRAM on this board. And one of the main reasons it's going to do that, even if you have got 64K of base memory, is because of DME. And this is going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be very interesting to see some extremely fast disk operating system I/O and stuff like that, because with the SRAM mapped into the base address space of the Atari, we can read and write to the SD card at like a megabyte a second, which should be a lot of fun. And we won't be constrained to doing that in the left and right cartridge banking windows. We'll be able to do it anywhere in memory. So I can't wait until that's possible. That's going to be a lot of fun. Because although we've got DMA on the side through at the moment, it's useful, very useful, but of course you can only transfer information to certain areas of memory that fall into the cartridge address space. Now, if you're in a position to do that kind of high-speed data transfer anywhere in RAM, then we can put our DOS buffers, sector buffers, that kind of thing, burst I/O when you're reading files into your program, anything like that. We can use DMA for it. DMA is particularly well suited to fat file systems as well, because the large cluster sizes lend themselves to very large amounts of data being read and written all at once, and that really optimizes DMA, rather than having to stop every 512 bytes or less and set up the next sector. You're going to see a lot of things that become possible that simply weren't possible before on the Atari, and still, and very importantly I think, all of that still happening with the 6502 SALI CPU doing most of the work, apart from the DMA engine, which you can think of like a kind of a co-processor, a bit like the Antic chip. So there it is anyway. So that's the XL version of the external Ultimate 1 megabyte. So there it is anyway. So I hope this little look into some of this new hardware, very cursory, superficial look, I hope it's been of interest to you. I'm going to delve more deeply into this stuff obviously later on, because once we get this out on the market, I guess we'll probably turn our attention to external Ultimate 1 megabyte, Incognito Lite, Incognito 3. I don't know which order it's going to happen in, but I'm hoping that once one works, once this works perfectly, which it very nearly does, and particularly once this works properly, and the firmware's done, that's the biggest part of it for me. Then it's just a case of basically minor alterations, I would think, cosmetic changes to get the same firmware on all the different pieces of hardware, so it'll all be totally consistent. They'll all use this loader, so when you've used one, you've used them all basically, and I think that's a good thing. And hopefully I can port some of these user interface changes back to the BIOS setup menu and these new Ultimate variants as well, for which I'll need a lot more memory. So I need to talk to Candle about some ways we can remove a lot of the constraints, because the constraints I worked under to get this to look like this and to function like this, and this doesn't have the little drop down windows and things like that. The constraints I worked under, this is all done in less than 2K of RAM, I think, or is it 1K? Under 1K of RAM to get this display up on the screen was quite the task. So hopefully I'll have a bit more breathing space with this new stuff, and nevertheless, what will be nice in the future as we go on, once this stuff gets released and it's all in the hands of the users, is to keep on pushing the hardware, because it's so versatile, all this stuff, the way Candle's designed it, that I think there's almost limitless potential to just keep wringing more capability out of it as time goes on, which is what I'm all about, I think. So right, so with that I'll wrap it up, because it's getting a bit long, this one. I'll dive in next week, probably have a closer look at a couple of these bits and bobs, install them in some machines and see how we get along. And so with that I'll bring it to a close. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I really appreciate all the kind comments that I received when I put a post on YouTube about my mother. That's very greatly appreciated, as are of course new patrons. I think we've got a couple. You'll see them in the list, which should be on the screen now as I'm talking. Sincere thanks to them, particularly sincere thanks to patrons and their understanding for the infrequency of videos. It seems to be a recurring story with me, but as I say, it's just things keep happening. So there it is anyway. So I hope this little look into some of this new hardware, very cursory, superficial look, I hope it's been of interest to you. And thanks again for your support. Do feel free to share the video, give it a reaction, give it a comment, and please leave any questions or suggestions down below. Bye bye for now, and I will see you in the next video.